Welcome to the Reformist Podcast.
Nah, hari ini kita edisi internasional lagi, Bu.
Yes, dan lagi-lagi bahas partai politik.
Partai politik. Jadi kali ini yang lagi datang ke Jakarta adalah perwakilan dari Parti Muda Malaysia ya. Ketumnya, presidennya, co-foundernya. Namanya Amira Aisyah Abdul Aziz. Dia ini co-foundernya juga sekarang masih jadi presidennya gitu. Dan banyak sih yang kita pengen nanya ya ke dia.
Iya. Yang gue penasaran kan biasanya kalau partai pakai identitas muda itu satu kayak kenapa? Karena muda belum tentu artinya progresif, muda bisa konservatif,
bisa jadi malah jadi dukung pemerintah banget.
Benar. Sebagaimana kita lihat di dinamika politik Indonesia ya,
bisa
muda
jadi
ini bisa beda-beda juga.
Bisa beda-beda artinya. Nah, kita
gitu.
pengen tahu nih kalau di Malaysia seperti apa gitu ya, dan banyaklah yang bisa kita discuss karena platformnya sebenarnya menarik banget.
Ya.
Oke, langsung aja.
Berpanjang-panjang.
Langsung aja kita mulai obrolan kita sama Amira. So here's another international edition.
Yeah,
of
more and more we're going international.
Exactly. So 2 episodes ago, we went to talk to Pita Limia-Rumrat, leader of the Move Forward Party.
Yes.
And now we have
another Southeast Asian country.
Another sibling.
Our
party
sister,
leader.
brother country.
Yes.
Just across the Selat.
Please welcome Amira, the co-founder and current leader of Parti Muda Malaysia. Welcome to the Reformist Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm so excited.
Very excited to have you.
So Amira is the sole woman party leader in Malaysia, and you're also the member of the Johor State Assembly, which is akin to DPRD here, the local parliament. Maybe to start, we can talk about your background a bit, how you got into politics, and before you finally founded Muda Party a few years back.
Yeah. I think obviously in not just in Malaysia, but largely in Southeast Asia, politics have always been about dynasty. A lot of people assume that when you go up very fast in politics, it's because you come from a big family name. That is not the same to me, and that's not true to me. Muda is, when I co-founded Muda, it is actually my first ever political party. So I didn't come from a political family background. I was actually raised in a slum area in Johor. So growing up, I've always seen, politics are not something that sort of like represent us. I think politics have always been something that happened to us in that area. Growing up, I've watched how, the impact of policies that are bad directly to the people. Growing up, I have neighbors who sold drugs for a living. I have friends who dropped out of school very early on because she, got pregnant at the age of 15 years old. And so you can see the impact between economic policy, social welfare policy, education policy directly to the people that the policy is supposed to serve. And so I feel that I always grew up with a lot of anger within me. So when I went to university, I started with student activism first. And at that point of time, it was at the peak of 1MDB issue, when Najib Razak, our then Prime Minister, had a huge corruption scandal that blew up not just in Malaysia, but the whole world. And I was part of, the young activists who were speaking out against what happened then. But because of what happened back when I was growing up, I've always felt this huge hatred against politics and politicians. And so if you ask me back then, 10 years ago, would I ever join politics? I would say, oh, no way, definitely no, right? And so they said never hate something too much. And so even during that whole activism time, a lot of political parties tried to push all the young people to go into political parties. And so I remember at that point of time, a new political party was established called Bersatu, which was supposed to be an alternative to UMNO, which is a race-based party, a Malay-based party. And they also pushed me to join Bersatu. If there's one thing that I really believe in is I don't think that race-based, identity-based politics should exist anymore in Malaysia. And so when that happened, I decided not to, because in that slum area that I was raised, it was 98% Malays. And a lot of times, our representatives are also coming from parties that are representing Malays. And so if you're talking about, this is important for the welfare of the Malays, why is it then the poor Malays, are growing poorer and poorer, and the rich Malays are the only ones benefiting from your policies? And so I knew that I didn't want to join that. When Sheraton move happened, which was another very monumental incident in Malaysian politics, when it was the first time that the government was taken down from within, which is not from the power of the people, we realized one thing, which is that we couldn't expect the people that we hate, the people that are doing the things that we disagree, to change the system that we don't like. And so as young people, for me at that point of time, was that if we want something to change, we couldn't just wait for change to happen. We have to ensure that we are part of the process of making that change happens. So we had a convening to discuss whether we should form a movement of young people who wanted to change politics. So initially it was a discussion of whether we should change politics from outside. And then later on, during that convening, we realized that there were a lot of young people who stopped and stepped aside from politics because they felt that their voices are not heard in politics. Politics is not a safe space for them, and that this political party system itself has not been giving room to young progressive mindsets to go up. And so we decided that in order to change the country system, we first have to change the vehicles that wanted to govern that country. And how do we do that is by creating an alternative vehicle that could show not just to win elections, but to also disrupt the political system and show the other political parties, look, you can be different. There are different ways of doing politics. And so MUDA was formed in 2020 with that conviction. So when people ask me, I usually say that I first joined politics out of anger towards the system, but the people I met in my journey has, sort of brought that anger and evolved it to hope. And I think MUDA is the good intersection between that anger and that hope, and how do we foster that to become a system? Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I think like many Indonesians are angry as well at the system, but political party is not always their first answer, right, on how to be angry at the system. There, as you mentioned, like it could have been a movement, could have been something else, but it's very interesting how you describe Partai MUDA as a vehicle, right? It's basically a vehicle of choice. Actually, our founding father, in one of the kind of pre-independence preparatory document, called political party as wadah arus pemikiran, as like the wadah itu apa? Platform for the ideologies, for the big like ideas of how this nation should become like in parties. But in Indonesia, this would be my question, right? Like basically people have lost hope in political parties. It's almost like a given because the game is presumably has been set up in a way that creates a certain dependency relationship with financiers, with bigger system. So like why political party? And maybe with that as well, can you also talk to the very I guess like those not familiar with Malaysian politics? Yeah. How does political party work in the bigger system? Like, can you explain about the election, the parliamentary system?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I think I agree in a sense that political party is not the only answer. I am a firm believer that you shouldn't pull all the good people in just one vehicle. They should be spread out, and you want to be able to ensure that people have a multiple arrays of choice rather than having to just settle between the lesser of two evils. And so for me, I started from activism. And I used to be one of those people who felt that, politics is, I was sitting on a high horse, that politics is too dirty, I will never touch it, that's something that, will change you forever. And so I sort of sworn off politics, right? But then, I think one of the things that is important to understand is that political parties will exist either way. You like it or not, they will exist. And they will remain one of the main contributors of policies and also systems in the country. if not the main contributor, right? And so with that mindset, understanding that that will happen anyway, how do you ensure that you sort of provide an alternative to those particular group? And I always feel this, that movements will shake up the ground. Like what happened in Indonesia, it doesn't just shake Indonesia. Like it's sort of like, some people even call it the South Asian Spring. What happened in Indonesia, what happened then in Bangladesh, in Nepal. So movements can shake up the ground. But after the ground has been shaken, who then stabilize it? Because people have to go forward with their lives. People have to work. People have to, and not everyone has the privilege of time, energy, and courage to go and shake the ground. And so that's why we felt that, I personally felt that having movements is important to shake the ground up, and then you have to have institutions to stabilize it. And so that's why we go to the political party. We do have friends who, after joining political party and form Muda with us, decided that I want to go back to movement, which is fair. And we are not in the business of convincing people, look, this is the only way to do things. In fact, in one of the things that I always say is that I feel that when we talk about democracy, and this is not just in Malaysia, but everywhere else, there's three main actors of the democracy, which is the political parties, and then you have the civil society organizations, and you have media. And these three main actors will be the actors who influence people's mindset. And so, you can be in either one of them to change that. And the reason why for us is when we formed political party, we also wanted it to, so what we call our political party is an activist party. So when I go and speak, I always introduce myself as an activist politician, because I think political party, this is our vehicle, but the mission is bigger than just a political party mission. It's not just to win election. It's to influence people. It is to show people how different ways can be done. And in Malaysia, unfortunately, now that we're talking about election, because we have a first past the post system, which means that when it comes to election, you contest in your constituency and you can only pick one person, and whoever gets the biggest majority vote will be the one representing that constituency. And then in parliament, the parties that have the most constitutional win will then become government. And so that makes small parties like Muda, it makes it very, very difficult for Muda to win by going at it alone. And so that's where a lot of dilemma happen for young idealist party like us. Because on one hand, you want to stick to your principles and ensuring that you don't work with people that are against your values. But that also means, we've tried that before. We went into the states election, there was a 6 states election, and Muda ran in those 6 states election alone, and we lost in all the seats that we contested. However, I'm still hopeful because we have 5% popular vote, and 5% popular vote for a small party with very, very little resource is a huge thing in Malaysia. But of course, in order for you to survive, in order for you to stay relevant, you have to win seats. And so that's the dilemma, right? Do you want to stay alone forever, or do you want to then work with other coalitions? And I think for Muda, it's very important for us that we understand the pragmatic side of politics. That at the end of the day, there are some relationships that need to be built. There are some coalitions that need to converge, and there are also some compromises that have to be made. But we are very steadfast in ensuring that we have a red line, and once that red line is crossed, we will not stick there anymore, regardless of whether or not it is convenient or relevant for us to be there. For example, we were actually part of the ruling government. When we first win election in 2022, we were part of what we call right now unity government. We were part of it, but then we pulled out. We pulled our support when we realized that the government is not delivering the promises that they initially wanted to do, and that the Deputy Prime Minister's corruption cases, which is 47 corruption cases, were dropped. And so that was when we pulled support. So I think for especially young people, we have one privilege over all other political parties, which is we have time. And so we're not, basically, we are not gambling with our livelihood when we're talking about winning elections in comparison to other political parties. And that allow us to build a new culture in politics.
I guess my next question would revolve around the platform itself, because from the very beginning, Muda presents itself as a new type of political party in Malaysia that is different from like the old guards, right? The UMNOs, the PKRs, and all that. But what I want to get at is what exactly are the political platforms or like the ideologies or like the sort of programs that Muda stands for? And the name Muda kind of suggests like it's a youth party. Is it tailored specifically towards the young, or is it actually for everyone? And what happens when you get older? Is it gonna be Tua?
Or we have like a wing,
or like a
Tua wing.
Tua wing. Yeah. What exactly Muda runs on?
Yes. So Muda, we do declare ourselves as a youth-led political party. Yeah. So in essence, we don't restrict our membership for only the young people. Yeah. So we do have members, as our oldest member is 86 years old. Our central executive committee, we have committee members at the age of 50 and above. So we do have older generation, because we also believe that it's an intergenerational work, right? However, we have to make a statement that the future belongs to the young people. And so young people should have a say and should be at the table of the decision making. However, they've always been left out. Yeah. And so that's the reason why we wanted to build a youth-led political party. And also the name Muda, when we first coined the name, when we found the party, the reason why we wanted Muda is also because not just for age, but also for the ideas. And so we ran the idea of memudakan Malaysia. So how do you make Malaysia young again? How do you make Malaysia, filled with idealism? How do you make Malaysia filled with that vigor of wanting to create hope and make change? How do you change the policies in Malaysia so that it benefits, all generations, but also especially the young people who have to inherit it? So that's where the name Muda comes from. And in order to protect that name, in order to protect that vision and that ideology, we put our system in the party, which is a little bit different than other political parties in the sense that in Malaysia, a lot, if not all, political parties have wings. And I'm not sure whether it's the same in Indonesia, but we have the youth wings, and also we have the women's wings. And so the problem with that is that the highest that a young person can climb in a political party is as the chief of the youth wing. Yes. And similarly, a lot of times, the highest that a woman can climb is as the chief of the women's wing. Yeah. And this is for us, this is like, I'm sorry, pardon the word, but it's very bullshit. Okay. Because I think you shouldn't just pigeonhole people based on their gender, based on their religion, race, and also age, right? And so one of the first things that we did when we established the party is that we know we do not want those wings anymore. We want to ensure that everyone who goes into Muda, regardless of your age, gender, race, religion, you have the same equal opportunity to lead the political party, which means you also have the same opportunity to be leaders of the country. And so we want to ensure that the system is being, is strongly first within the political party. Similarly, when we're talking about financiers and all that, this again is not an issue just in Malaysia, but a lot of political parties are usually very dependent on one or two big pockets to fund them. And that's one of the things that we wanted to get rid of. And so we put a system in where we can only receive donation of funding only up to 250,000 ringgit from one singular person or one singular organization or one singular individuals, simply because we wanted to ensure that we do not have a godfather looming over the party. So that's one. Number two, we have a very transparent system when it comes to any tender within the party. So anything that needs us to spend more than 50,000 ringgit has to go through an open tender. Just to ensure that there's transparency from the party so that the party members learn that culture, so that when you become in power, you know that culture exists. And number three, in terms of finances, we want to keep our pocket wide rather than deep. That means we run a lot of crowdfunding. We run, because we are young, so we run a lot of very, very fun programs, I would say, like movie nights and pickleball tournaments, just to get regular Malaysians to be involved in funding the party. Every 5 ringgit to us is if a person donated 5 ringgit, they are considered our funder, and we are also entitled to, they are entitled to our reports. They are entitled to understand what Muda is doing, and so all these things are something to keep the party in check and to keep the party transparent, so that we are always answerable to the people first before the financiers. So I think those are the things that the system that the party changed or the party is doing. And what we see is that when Muda was created, because we wanted to disrupt the system, and so before this, a lot of times young people in other political parties, they were given some quota in order for them to contest. But when Muda was established, the youth wings in a lot of political parties started to so they were demanding from their main wing for more people from the youth wings to contest, because they said, if Muda people can contest, why do we have to wait? Why do we? And so I think those are the kind of things that we wanted to do, so that we don't create change just within our political party, but the things we do make other political parties realize that things can change in your own political parties as well. And so last general election, there's a huge surge of young people running in elections, following Muda's establishment, following the fact that young people can already vote at the age of 18. And for me, I think even if we haven't won any big elections, like we only have 2 elected representatives, myself and our previous president, Syed Saddiq, but for us, having been able to change people's ideas and mindset of how political parties should look like, and having been able to influence political parties, other political parties, is already a huge success.
Yeah. I want to get a bit into the Muda word itself, right? Like young people in Malaysia. Because I think oftentimes we put Muda as synonymous with good or idealistic. But that's not always necessarily the case, right?
Do you have anybody in mind?
No. Because when it comes to becoming a politician and creating good policies, it takes more than just being young. Of course, you want new ideas and young people. So I just want to get your perspective a bit on that, in terms of how are the young people in Malaysia ideologically, demographically, spread, values, because there was this Jakarta Post article, right, saying that sometimes we put Gen Zs in one box, like they all like the same things, they have the same values, but then like new research show maybe like more of Gen Zs are more conservative, and so on and so forth. So like what is it like, young people in Malaysia? And secondly, how do you speak a bit to this like Muda versus value as like something that's not directly synonymous?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, I agree with you. We can't just put all young people as if they come from the same branch. Even in Malaysia, young people are very polarized, and that is shown through the previous general election. A lot of the young people from the more suburban and rural areas, they are more conservative than young people who are in urban areas. And I think that trend goes through all the nations. You can see that happening even in the US, even in Germany, right? It's not just a Southeast Asia thing. It's a global thing. But I think beyond that, understanding that young people these days are not from the same mold, is, to me, that's a great thing. Because that means that young people are not exactly just copy-pasting everything that their older generations are doing. And so just because your father is voting for party A doesn't mean that you will vote the same. Because of the materials that you consume, because of the things that you've been watching, have influenced how you vote, where your allegiance lie, and what you think is best for the country. So I think the challenge for political parties like Malaysia, like Muda, Malaysia is not a political party. The challenge is that how do we ensure then that our messages get across this polarized mindset? So obviously you can't convert everyone to believe in what you're fighting for. But the idea is that they are consuming information. They are no longer just doing whatever their parents are telling them to do. That is the biggest thing about this Generation Z. And so knowing that, how do you then want to ensure that your messages get across them? And I think for Muda, that's something that we are, I am just very openly saying this, that we are still experimenting that, in the sense that we used to be the top political party on TikTok in Malaysia. However, because other political parties with a lot more resource understand that that is where the battlefield is, they started investing more in TikTok. And so now they are dominating the space more than us. And so then how do we then reclaim that space back, or at least get more competitive with them? That's one of the challenge that we are facing today. And also, when we talk about whether or not we should make muda as a value, I also don't think so. Muda, just being young, is not an ideology and of itself. It's your target audience, it's the people that you want to serve. But for the political party Muda, we declared our ideology as a social democratic ideology. So we hold firm to the social democratic principles that we felt is something that is resonating a lot to, regardless of whichever generations you are from. And I think, however, having said all that, to me, it is still very important to capture the young people's imagination. And it is still very important for us to put the young people as our main target audience. Not the sole target audience, but they are still our main target audience. They are our main voter base to us. Because at the end of the day, as I've mentioned, when we want to talk about policy, we want to understand the policies that will benefit the ones who will inherit the country, and those are the young people.
And maybe if we can get to that a bit, back to my previous point on like the platform, and then you just recently mentioned that the ideology, so to speak, is the social democratic ideology. What do you reckon are the top issues that Malaysians face, or maybe more specifically young Malaysians face, and how your platform is directly addressing those grievances?
So multiple research in Malaysia have been done to understand what young people are facing the most right now. So during the last general election, there are 5 main things that young people are looking at. Number 1 is cost of living, which is an intergenerational thing. It's not just young people. Number 2 is housing cost, because a lot more people from our generation are not able to buy house at all, right? Which is something that is more accessible to our parents, regardless of what is their salary. And then the third one is in terms of mental health. That is also something that is very huge among the young people now. And then the fourth one is also job opportunities, because a lot of young people in Malaysia, they feel that it's not just they are unemployed, but a lot of people are underemployed or mismatched to what they learn and the things that they have, the opportunities that they have. And the fifth one is climate change. So these are the 5 top things that are bugging the young people. And I feel that among these 5 things, at least 3 of them are bugging not just young people, but also all generations in public. So in Muda, we have also 5 pillars that we are fighting for. Number 1 is economy. So when we talk about economy, it's not just about what kind of policies we want to roll out, but also how do we want to ensure that the country is also generating income. So one of the big things in economy when we talk about it is the tax reforms. So we wanted to reform a lot of the taxation system in Malaysia so that, the rich are taxed more. So for example, capital gains tax, that's not something that has been done yet. When we talk about, for example, even inheritance tax is also something that we want to return back. We used to have inheritance tax and we don't have it anymore now. And also windfall tax that happened during the COVID back then. A lot of big corporations benefited from the situation, and so they should be taxed more than other people. So these are the things that we wanted to do so that then the economic part can then be re-looked at, including our sales and service tax now, and this argument between whether sales and service tax and also goods and service tax, which one is better. That's number 1. Number 2 is definitely on education, because it's so important for us to reform the education. And one of the things that is more controversial in Malaysia about Muda is the fact that we wanted to get rid of the race-based quota in terms of education. So Malaysia, we have a race-based quota. So how many percentage of Malays can get to university in comparison to Chinese and Indians in public universities, in scholarships. And so we wanted to get rid of that. So that's one of the main thing that was always been used against us.
And that's controversial.
That's controversial because we are seen as betraying the Malay rights in the country. But the point is, because we do not want to just change to merit-based tax, because we also understand that people come from different backgrounds, different class, social background. And so we wanted to change from a race-based quota to a needs-based quota. So who needs them the most? Yeah. And for me, the Malays shouldn't be scared, because at the end of the day, we are still the 70% of the B40 in the country. So the Malays are still the ones who needs it the most. Yeah. The point is that you want to ensure that the Chinese and Indians who needs it the most can also get the assistance. So those are one of the things that is very controversial from the things that we said. The third one is institutional reforms, because regardless of whatever that you do, institutional reforms is actually the first one, because we believe that if you don't have good institutions, the rest of the things will not fall into place, right? So if corruption is still happening, if Prime Minister have too much power, all these things will not be effective for the rest of the policies. And so institutional reforms remain our top number one. And then the fourth one is on the social welfare. So things like access to disabled communities, access to the marginalized communities, because when we talk about public transport, when we talk about people's mobilization and access from the people in the Klang Valley and also people outside of Klang Valley, which is like the Jakarta equivalent, have very different levels of access when they wanted to look for work, when they wanted to go to school, and all these things are something that we are looking at closely. And the fifth thing is definitely about climate. And I think currently Muda is the only party that has climate in our...
The only party?
The rest of the parties, they will have some climate policies when it comes to manifesto, but when it comes to the main pillars of the party, Muda is the only party that has climate in it. And I think largely also because young people are living with climate anxiety that the older generation might not feel the same. And so that's something that we are very passionate about as well. Yeah.
So how much of the voters are young? Like in terms of percentage?
Yeah. So because last election we've had... So before this, the young voters make up about like 40% of the voter population. But because of Undi 18, which then because with the age from 21 to 18 years old, so now they make up more than 50% of the voters. And also, just to add on to that, although a lot of people are saying that we shouldn't give the right to young people to vote because they don't know what they should vote for. Because in Malaysia, that's a huge thing when we wanted to fight for that, because they were like, oh, young people are immature, they will not know where to vote, which is ridiculous, right? Yeah. You can get married at the age of 16 for the young Muslim girls. Yeah. You can drive at the age of 17 years old. You can be charged legally for crime at the age of 18 years old, but you can't vote. That doesn't make sense, number one. Number two, I feel that in Parliament, there are more immature older men than immature young. In fact, there's no...
I like watching highlights of them, Parliament Malaysia.
Oh my God, it's so embarrassing.
I mean, I'm going to ask the difficult question, right? So if the young people make up more than 50%, I understand the first past the post setup, right? Which makes it very difficult. But so what do you think are the gap from the policy platform that you have so eloquently summarized, right? Which are supposedly the issues for young people vis-a-vis the voter turnout, the outcome of election, right? Because is that an issue of, because I think we have a lot to learn from that as well, because like, is that an issue of, are we not capturing the right issues of the young people, or are young people not voting based on policy platforms, or something else, or is just is it just resource asymmetry, right? There's like too much resource on the other side. What do you think was the main challenges?
Definitely, I think resource still plays a huge factor, in the sense that in terms of outreach, we still have, our outreach is still not as big as other bigger political parties. That is not just outreach in terms of ground outreach, but it's also online outreach as well. So that is still one of our main hurdle. But also largely also translating. I think this is something that we are still learning as we are going about it, is that translating these policies that we want to languages that can be accepted by the people. When you talk about institutional reforms, for example, people who are struggling for bread and butter, they don't see institutional reform as something important because they don't see the connection between corruption and why is the price of my bread higher now in comparison to yesterday. So I think making those connections and understanding like the language of the young people is something that is very important, and that is something that we are still experimenting, and we are not afraid to say that we are trying our best to meet as many people as possible, to learn as much as possible, to improve on that front. Because most of the times when I meet with young people, like a small room discussion where we have like a heart-to-heart talk, they always say that we didn't know this about Muda. We didn't know that you are doing this. We didn't know that you have done that. And so that means that the things that we are doing, the messages that we are trying to push out, have not reached the intended audience. So that's something that we are trying to improve, and we are trying to do that as fast as possible, because regardless, having said the fact that we do have time, but when you talk about making the country better, you should not wait for too long.
Yeah, definitely. I've been finding a reason to bring Zohran Mamdani into our conversation, but yeah, last week New York City elected Zohran Mamdani, right? And I think when it comes to messaging that resonates with young people, really making it grounded. And I think there is something in local elections that makes politics a lot closer to the voters compared to national elections, right? So yeah, definitely. I think like we have the same.
Just to point that out, we don't have a local election.
So
for
mayors or
no, we don't. Mayors are appointed in Malaysia. So that's one of the
Mayors
things.
are appointed by whom?
Appointed by the state government. And so one of the things that we are fighting for under the pillar of institutional reform is to return the people's third vote, which is the local council election.
Which that makes it a lot more difficult then, because then you have to like win the state assembly in order to then run all the mayoralty in town.
And this is also, again, this is a global trend. Smaller parties have better opportunities and better better bet at winning in a local council election. So that makes Muda having less advantage than other political parties.
I want to touch upon an issue that you have touched upon quite a few times during the course of this discussion, that might be quite controversial, at least in Malaysia, and I don't know, in Indonesia as well. But one striking difference between Malaysian and Indonesian society is the issue of identity politics. Whereas in Indonesia, it's quite frowned upon, but in Malaysia, it's like it's been the case for a while, right? In Indonesia, like you wouldn't have a political party named Parti Pribumi in Indonesia. That would be very politically incorrect. And in Indonesia, at least not directly, nobody runs on being a party for a specific ethnic group or even a specific religion. It doesn't really happen in Indonesia, whereas in Malaysia, that's sort of like the norm, right? You have like the United Malay Organization, you have the Malaysian Chinese party and all that. And you mentioned not wanting to join Bersatu also because of Bersatu being a race-based party, and Muda is something that is not. I want to ask Muda's stance on this officially, because I don't know if it's like a taboo topic in Malaysia. Do you not want to touch upon it? Or is it something that is okay for you guys to be like, okay, this is not something for the 21st century?
Yeah, definitely. I will hardcore argue that this is really something that shouldn't still be happening in Malaysia in 2025. I think I have to acknowledge the fact that when we first gained independence, I understand the relevancy of it because of the colonizers' divide and conquer tactic that makes Malays, Chinese, and Indians very fragmented and very separated, and so they felt a lot of distrust against, amongst the races. And so understanding that you have your representative representing your ethnic group is very important at that point of time. But now it's a different story altogether. And I don't see the relevance of still ensuring that, this political party represent one segment group of people. Because at the end of the day, we are all Malaysians, right? Regardless of what skin color you are born with, what religion you adopt. At the end of the day, what unites us all is that we are Malaysians. And I think one of the things that made me also realize that Muda has to be that was when I was in, there are two stories that make this very personal for me, was that when I was in high school, I have a friend, and he told me that when he was 7 years old, you know, usually when you first entered schools, your teacher asks you, what do you want to be? And he stood up and he said that he wanted to be a prime minister. And then the whole class, including the teacher, and the teacher was the one who laughed the most at him. And the teacher said, oh, you know, you actually cannot be a prime minister because you're an Indian and you're not a Malay. That is not in the federal constitution at all. It was not implemented there. But because of the political parties, they have made people to think that Malays have more rights than the rest of the people, that caused the teachers to say that. And saying that to a 7-year-old kid is so petty, right? Like why are you crushing a small kid's dream? That's number one. Number two was when we finished high school, a friend of mine who got straight A's almost in all exam, she's also an Indian. One day she called me up and she was crying because we were doing our university application, and she mentioned that a lot of the courses that she wanted to apply for, she couldn't because a lot of it has Bumiputra sahaja
requirement
dalam the
So
requirement.
only for Malays and other Bumiputras
Yes. Yes, so only for Malays and the indigenous Bumiputra people. And so these are among the things that is the causal effect of political parties representing their own parties only. And the problem was that a lot of things in Malaysia right now, let's say if we want to talk about bread and butter issue, we want to talk about cost of living, if we want to talk about job opportunities, if we want to talk about tax, we want to talk about public transport, somehow political parties representing their ethnic groups are able to twist it into a racial thing. And so instead of talking about policy, instead of talking about education, instead of talking about economy, Malaysian politics have always been circling back to what race are you? Are you a Malay? Are you a Chinese? Are you an Indian? And so that have become the sole argument in parliament itself and among the politicians. And so unless and until we take this this particular part out of the formula, then Malaysian politics will not be able to grow beyond identity-based politics.
That is a very reformist stand, right?
Yeah.
Because in Malaysia, it's sort of like really hard to really be against this Malay supremacy rights and all that, right? But being like outspoken about it, I think is so brave and reformist.
I never know, I might be charged.
Well, while you are in Indonesian land, maybe the same law doesn't apply. But speaking of identity, and this will be our last question because we don't have that much time, unfortunately. Being a female, being a woman, and Ray earlier, mentioned that you're the sole woman party leader, and you're not the son of previous presidents. In Indonesia, the sole woman party leader is the son of the first president, and so on and so forth. How do you see things are different being a woman politician?
I think, I think this is not just in politics, definitely. I mean, I used to be in the legal fraternity, and then I went into corporate. And women always have to fight 2 or 3 times harder than our male counterparts to prove ourselves. And even more when you are in a very public spotlight. And I always say that politics have always been a gentleman's club. So politics have always been, in Malaysia, we call it, like the people who dominate politics in Malaysia, we call it the triple M, Malay, Male, Muslim. And so these are the people who dominate politics in Malaysia. And for women to penetrate that particular segment has been very, very difficult. Number one, in terms of negotiations, in terms of making collaborations with other political parties, there is always that sort of you can feel that you need to be very careful of the way you say things, because when a man raises their voice, they are seen as, oh, he knows what he wants. But when a woman raises my voice, oh, she's very emotional. And I've had people asking me when in a conversation and I accidentally raised my voice, and people were like, relax lah, on your pilih ke.
Exactly.
So that's very normal. And unfortunately, that's something that is the reason why a lot of young women stepped out of politics, because they don't feel that this is a safe space for them. There is a lot of locker room talk in politics. There is a lot of rooms that you cannot access. For example, very simple, like the smoking room. You can access it, but a lot of us don't smoke, and a lot of conversations and decisions are made in those rooms, and we're not there. And also, I think one of the things is that I do not have the privilege of the name, but I do have the privilege of not yet being a mother. And so I do have my own time. A lot of women in politics who are mothers are also expected to perform their job well as mothers. And so a lot of political meetings happen beyond 2 or 3 a.m., right? And so these are the times that the mothers have to go back and be there for their kids. And so meanwhile, male politicians, when they meet up at like 10, 11 p.m., people will just think that it's normal. But when women politicians are there will be questions of, so who's taking care of the kids at home if you're here? So those kind of conversations are normal. On top of it, I think one of the biggest challenge for women in politics is the backlash that we get from the public. When men are being criticized by the public, it's always based on what he says, his ideas. But as a woman, I've always been criticized by how I look, what I'm wearing. I remember in my election, I had my first full-blown panic attack was because I was on a break between 2 walkabouts, and I made the mistake of opening my notifications, and I just saw like a parade of comments on saying like, oh, you're fat like a fridge, like the fat have gotten to your brain, or you're stupid, and things like that. And then a DM that asked me to go kill myself in a very vivid way. And so these things, unfortunately, is not special to me. It happens to all of women in Malaysia that enter politics. And so that's the reason why women wanted to step out from politics. I've even lodged a police report before because of sexual harassment online. And I remember a senior female politician called me up, and bless her soul, she wants to give me good advice. But she told me, you shouldn't have lodged that police report because now you are seen as weak. And I understand her, because in their generation, women have to prove that we are iron in order for us to be leaders. But I told her that when I lodged this police report, it's not just for me, but it's for many women that want to come after me to know that someone is trying to make the space safe for you. And I think that's something that new generation of female leaders are bringing into the game that previous generation of female leaders never thought is possible, which is how do you still be human while still surviving politics. I think that's something that is, I see a lot of women, my generation is trying to do that. And so beyond my political party, I also formed an NGO called Women in Power, where we want to provide the safe space, especially for women in power. So I always say this, whenever I go into forums or rooms, I'm always the only female, especially the only young female there. But I think my purpose in politics is also to ensure that Amira Aisha, a 30-year-old female president in Malaysia, is no longer an exception, but I want it to be the norm for women to become leaders.
Right.
Yeah.
Because currently it's really the exception, right? Because I think if I have it correctly, I think the number of MPs, women MPs, is still very, very small, even smaller than here in Indonesia.
It's 13.5%.
13.5%. We are at 22%. So we're not good, but even Malaysia is even more difficult. And I guess that somehow could translate to like gender bias in like policy making and all that.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's such a powerful note as to end this conversation. I think particularly, I think when we talk about womanhood, it's also intersectional. There's this aspect of maybe like women politicians or those who can afford to run for office also comes from privilege, and therefore that justifies like you're weak, but you're not weak, but you're a woman. So like this internal misogyny, and like you seem like someone with privilege, so you're kind of like, I can hurt you, and you won't be hurt. I don't know, but I feel like it's very real. This like women in power as a movement, I think is a great initiative, and I hope if not already in Indonesia we have similar kind of support group for those experiencing the same things.
And speaking about intersection, I think I also should admit the privilege that I'm a Malay, and so it is even a lot harder for non-Malay women to enter politics. So now in Malaysia, we don't have a single Indian female MP. And again, that's one significant group of people unrepresented in the parliament.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Amira, for your time. We learned so much. I hope the young Indonesian women politicians are also listening to this and can take notes.
Thank you so much for having me.
Enjoy the rest of your visit in Indonesia.
Plaza Indonesia, you know.
And good luck for the next general election.
Yes.
over
Thank
the- I
you.
think it's in
Thank
3
you
years,
so
right?
much. I hope the next time we meet,
And
Still
federal
on.
MP. Yeah, maybe a minister already. So thank you so much, Amira.
thank you so much. Thank you.
Oke, apa nih takeaways-nya seperti biasa?
Jadi dia sebagai politisi udah muda, perempuan, partainya kecil lagi gitu. Jadi kayak triple bukan minority sih, triple identitas yang menyusahkan ya kayaknya.
Betul.
Kalau gue mungkin akan highlight di yang tadi kayak as a woman politician gitu. I know it might sound apa ya, kayak it's like the same message that we've heard before gitu, tapi kayaknya tadi experience Amira ini real banget gimana yang tadi dia bahas ya, sebagai politisi itu ekspektasinya kan tinggi satu hal, ekspektasi untuk perempuan itu tinggi di banyak tempat, tapi particularly sebagai politisi itu lu di ruang publik banget kan gitu. Jadi it's like you're especially vulnerable terhadap berbagai judgment, baik itu tadi misalnya ekspektasi sebagai ibu, tapi juga kekerasan digital, kekerasan berbasis kata-kata juga gitu ya, tapi yang tadi DM dan ucapan-ucapan yang jauh lebih keras atau kasar gitu ya terhadap women politician, dan itu pun apa namanya, maksudnya di Indonesia ini sebenarnya ini ekspresi ini real juga, kayaknya ada beberapa report yang meng-highlight isu yang sama, dan kita kayaknya belum benar-benar solve nih gitu, karena bahkan kita masih deal sama gender based violence atau gender based discrimination yang untuk masyarakat biasa aja belum kita solve gitu kan, apalagi tadi women in power.
Gue mau highlight dikit soal dia punya balance antara pragmatism dan idealismnya juga. Jadi kan tadi dia mention ada platformnya dia lumayan dalam tuh ya, dia ada tax reform, ada institutional reform, ada climate change, ada macam-macam. Dan mereka running on that. Tapi begitu kemudian mereka menang nih bersama Pakatan Harapan, terus habis itu ternyata nih the government yang mereka part of akhirnya stray away from those values, mereka bisa bilang oke, ini nggak cocok lagi sama kita out. Jadi kayak mereka tetap idealistic tapi juga tetap pragmatic in the sense mereka waktu itu harus join coalition gitu kan, tapi nanti kedepannya kita nggak tahu lagi nih gimana supaya mereka benar-benar bisa nggak cuma dapat 1-2 kursi gitu ya.
Betul. Tadi juga dibahas ngomongin policy platform, kan sebenarnya ini kan yang barang yang dijualnya ke target voters mereka, dalam kasus ini orang muda, dan tadi voter apa namanya batas minimum usianya tuh turun dari 21 ke 18 gitu kan. Menurut Amira ini hal yang bagus. Di Malaysia ternyata kontroversial karena umur 18 tahu apa, bisa vote yang bener nggak gitu. Menurut lo gimana? Bisa vote yang
bisa, dikit 17, tapi ya hasilnya questionable. Kita bisa.
Iya, tapi yang menarik diakuin bahwa sebenarnya young people ini juga emang nggak bisa ditaruh di satu kotak hitam yang sama. Tadi bisa beda-beda preferensi politiknya, preferensi isunya, dan alasan mereka vote juga beda-beda gitu. Tapi I think at least it's important to make them the target audience ya, baik secara maksudnya kayak political awareness, bisa di-engage di policy platformnya dan sebagainya juga.
Sama mungkin we cannot not speak about the fact bahwa mereka very reformist on the topic of identity politics.
Benar, right.
Itu something yang kadang gue kalau ngeliat politik Malaysia kayak kok gini amat gitu. Dan si parti muda ini benar-benar kayak oke, ini udah abad 21, kita udah nggak main gini-gini lagi gitu. Ketuanan Melayu atau hak-hak khusus berdasarkan etnis gitu. Dan mereka instead of berdasarkan etnis, kita berdasarkan kebutuhan aja, berdasarkan siapa yang paling butuh. Yang emang di mana-mana affirmative action mestinya kayak begitu ya, nggak depends on your skin color atau hal kayak gitu. Tapi kayak kalau emang lu yang underprivileged, lu yang mungkin lebih berhak untuk dapat bantuan gitu kan.
Iya. Sebenarnya aneh ya, karena harusnya base voters mereka kan yang pribumi ini base voters, tapi mereka malah run on message progresif yang kayak
belum tentu
justru gitu. Tapi all in all kayaknya tapi all in all kayaknya poin utamanya itu bahwa selama sistem politiknya sendiri masih di set up in a way yang bikin partai kecil susah buat menang, sebenarnya masih jauh banget gitu kan dari reform yang dibayangkan. Makanya balik ke Indonesia, RUU pemilu gitu, sistem kalau di Malaysia tadi dijelasin first past the vote, artinya yang nilai yang vote terbanyak di satu distrik otomatis menang gitu kan, bukan bisa ngurutin atau bisa beberapa dan sebagainya. Itu bakal terus-terusan bikin partai petahana yang emang udah besar, resource-nya lebih banyak akan selalu menang gitu kan. Jadi kayaknya all the more reason untuk kita sama-sama perhatiin nih yang kayak RUU pemilu tuh soalnya benar-benar set up pemenangnya nanti siapa gitu kan. It's like setting up main bola, tapi aturan bolanya kalau nggak diliatin udah akan memenangkan orang-orang tertentu gitu.
Gue ngeliat sistemnya Malaysia sama kita itu, Malaysia first past the post, kalau kita kan dapil base yang suaranya pokoknya suara buat partai ini sekian. Kalau di kita positifnya kan at least kalau dapat 10% suara, kurang lebih lo akan dapat 10% kursi gitu kan. Tadi Amira cerita dia dapat 5% suara, tapi dia nggak dapat kursi sama sekali. Jadi ada 5% suara orang yang akhirnya nggak jadi apa-apa gitu. Jadi mungkin ini soal pemilu, I think we need to strike a balance ya. Tapi kalau di sana kan at least MP-nya siapa jelas gitu mewakili dapilnya, distriknya siapa, accountability-nya. Nah kalau di kita kurang gitu. Nah, mungkin nanti bisa ada pembahasan ke sana juga nih RUU pemilu yang baru, akan seperti apa bisa nge-balance antara kedua ya.
Sama tadi sebenarnya sebelum kita mulai take tuh kita sempat bahas dana reses di Malaysia nggak ada ya.
Benar.
Jadi maksudnya ide bahwa sebenarnya udah clear nih per dapil ada kandidat yang jelas yang tanggung jawab, tapi nggak per se ada resources buat ngelakuin itu gitu ya. Di Indonesia dana resesnya banyak, malah baru-baru ini ditambah. Tapi si relasi antara voting district sama kandidat itu agak bukan kandidat lagi ya, MP ini tetap distant karena per distrik itu bisa beberapa MP juga gitu kan.
Betul.
Banyak lah
jelas siapa individual yang bertanggung jawab atas gua gitu. Ya, jadi ini bisa jadi pelajaran juga nih buat pembuatan RUU pemilu kedepannya gitu. I think bisa something yang dipelajari di situ juga. Udah banyak kayak takeaways-nya. I really enjoyed this discussion.
Next episode negara mana?
Negara mana lagi? Mungkin Southeast Asia yang lain dulu ya. Filipina. Tapi nggak harus kayak gitu. Reformis nggak semua hanya bahas negara-negara lain ya. Kita mungkin episode berikutnya kita balik
ke Indonesia
lagi. Oke, so I guess that's it.
Thanks for watching. Sampai jumpa di Reform selanjutnya. Bye.